All right, June 17th. So, as you can see, I erased a lot of this board, and there's a lot of mini stories in here. These are the juicy stories. They're fun to tell and fun to listen to. But before we get to this, we have to finish up this section. But I can just go over this real quick. So the last video I was talking about my this job that I got yelled at by like 8 chefs in a row. So the timeline on that is I left that job after about 1 year, and then I started working for that chef that yells a lot. And these are all mini stories of ridiculous things that happen while working for him before his restaurant opened. And then right after I finished working for him, that's when I opened my own restaurants. When I was 22, I started the last job prior to opening my restaurants. I opened my restaurants when I was 24. Okay, so down here. So a stage is when you go work at restaurants for free to either apply for a job or just to learn stuff. And you usually ask the chef, like, hi, my name is whatever, I'm from this place, and I'd like to stage there, and this is my purpose for staging. So you can tell them up front, like, hey, I'm trying to stage for a job, or hey, I want to stage just to learn and see how your restaurant functions and all that stuff. So in addition to working a lot of cooking jobs, I staged at this long list of restaurants that I thought was would be like good to see, like pretty much at that point in time, the ones that I heard people talk about a lot and that kind of stuff, just like the older ones, and they have a name for themselves. So I went and I staged a lot of them and got a couple stories. Let's see, I'm gonna tell the Thunder story first. So when I staged at this restaurant, and it was obviously it was like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, but it was the for anyone who lives in Hawaii, there was that one period where it rained for like a whole month straight, and if it did stop raining, it only stopped for a couple hours and it just started raining again. So it was during that time. So when I showed up to that job stage, well, actually, let me back up. So I didn't call ahead or anything. I was just like, I'm just gonna walk in and ask for a stage. So actually, I was looking for another restaurant, and I was looking on my phone like the directions and stuff, and I couldn't find the restaurant. It was too hard to find, and I never did end up staging at that other restaurant, but I couldn't find it. And then I saw this restaurant. I was like, oh, I'll just go stage there instead, because that seems like an interesting place to stage. So I just walked in the back door and asked if I could stage. They said yes, and yeah, I just started helping them like cut vegetables and whatever, and cut butter into perfect cubes. They're really they're really anal about their butter cubes being really straight, which is, so I can talk about butter for a moment. Butter for your hot bread. And anyone who's tried to spread cold butter knows that it's no good. You should have soft butter for your customers when they come in to serve with your bread. Why are you gonna give them cold butter and then they take their knife, they go like that, they spread it on, and then there's just a lump of cold butter on there. Doesn't make any sense. Anyways, they made us cut these blocks of plugra butter, that's like expensive butter, into perfect like largish dices. And yeah, I cut it, and then they said like, no, it's not straight enough and that stuff. So you just it just gets thrown to the side for the line cooks to use it as melted butter. So first the people get to cut the perfect dices, and then all the trim goes to the line. Anyways, about the story. So one of the line cooks over there I went to school with, and it was like 6 or 7 o'clock, and he came up to me, he gave me his credit card, and he was like, hey, can you go buy me some, oh, what's it? I think it was radishes. Yeah, he asked me to go buy radishes. And I was like, okay. So, because he ran out on his station and he didn't want to get yelled at. So he asked me to go. So I went outside, and then I started like walking in the direction of a store, which was like 1 mile away, which is like a local grocery store. That's a relatively big chain. So like 2 minutes into walking, all of a sudden it just started dumping rain. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm just gonna assume I'm gonna get soaked. And then like halfway there, it starts thundering and lightning and that whole thing, and like blistery winds, and it's like there's about to be a hurricane or something. So I started jogging over there, and I got there, which is 1 mile away. By that point, I was already soaked all the way. My underwear was soaked, my socks were soaked, my phone, I was just keeping it in my pants. Even though it was getting wet, it wasn't like soaking wet. And I would just like cover it with my hand. So I got in there, I looked around the produce section, no radishes. Then I asked the produce clerk at the front, because they could clearly see I was wearing a chef jacket, so they knew like I was working. So I asked them like, hey, do you know where I can find radishes? Because you guys don't have any. And then, yeah, they're like, oh, try that store over there, 1 mile that way, when the restaurant's that way. And I'm like, okay. So I'm just jogging now through this thunder lightning storm, another mile, and then they have the radishes. I get the radishes and I jog back 2 miles, and then I get to a restaurant. I go in the back door, and then everyone, and especially the chef, was just like mortified that I was just like drenched in rain, and I was stodging there, and I did that for them. So I just walked in. I was like, here's your radishes. and then they're like, oh, you have to change your clothes and whatever, and oh, you can go home now, and that kind of stuff. I don't know if they're actually worried of me getting sick or something, or if it was just trying to not get sued or some legal stuff because somebody ran through a thunderstorm while working for you and they're not employed. Anyways, turns out nobody ordered that dish that needed the radishes for the rest of the night. So I ran through a thunderstorm to get radishes for nothing. Except I have a story. Alright, I think I have time for another one. Yeah, 2 minutes. This one's a short one. So, there's hard mochi that's like, it's really, really dense. I'm guessing like you microwave it or something and it softens it. Anyways, I was at this restaurant where one of their signature dishes was mochi crusted fish, and you had to take these really hard pucks and you had to microplane them. And you know, a microplane is metal, but these things are like bricks. Like you could throw them at somebody's head and it would like bounce off and hurt. So usually whenever any of from what I heard, I stodged there for 2 weeks. From what I heard, they usually give it to the people who screw up in the front of the house. That's their punishment. Like, you blah 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 blah, go grate some mochi. Because it was a pain in the ass, because you had to put so much pressure, and it was just really hard and menial to grate mochi. But since I stodged there for 2 weeks, I would get assigned to help this person, and then I would help, and then the thing would get done really fast. Then I'm like, oh, what else do you need? And they're like, oh, I don't have anything else. And then I go back to the chef and I'm like, chef, what do you need me to do? And then I do that thing and I'm done. And then, chef, what do you need me to do? Anyways, over the course of like the first week, I would finish like all of the work in the beginning, and there's like literally nothing else to do. And they're like, oh, you can grate mochi if you want. And I'm like, yeah, because I always wanted to do more and faster. So I like grated mochi really, really like energetically. I wanted to do it. It wasn't a punishment for me, but yeah. After I grade it, because when you grade it, these hard little pucks, they turn into like snow, puffy snow, and they get bigger in volume. And by that point, I graded enough. By the end of the 2 weeks, I graded enough mochi for them to last for like a month. And the person on the station with the mochi was so happy, because if nobody gets punished and that person's not in a jam, then that person has to grade it. And yeah, I spent quite a few hours grading hard mochi on blunt microplanes. But yeah, that was a fun place to stage. All right, that should be 12 minutes. Oh, 11 minutes.